and welcome to Soul Talk. This is with Rabbi David Aaron and Leora Mandel. Rabbi Aaron, we have the holiday of Shavuot upon us, and this is the holiday where we're celebrating the giving of the Torah. But I was actually thinking about the idea, it almost sounds funny, that we're making a celebration upon receiving lots of rules and regulations for how we're supposed to live our lives. And I don't know that most people would make a celebration on the anniversary of that date. And that is something that we are doing because this is a holiday and we are celebrating receiving this Torah, which is, in addition to stories about our forefathers and ancestors, it's also lots of rules for how we are meant to live our lives. So, how do we understand the idea of celebrating these laws and rules, in addition to the fact that these laws and rules were given to a specific part of the population, Jewish people, not even right at our inception, but that if these are laws and rules that are necessary and important for humanity to live by, humanity existed before these laws and rules were given. So both trying to understand why were they given now and why to this day are we still celebrating having received these laws and rules.
Great. Yes. Now, there's a cute joke by a stand-up comedian. He said, after reading much about the dangers of smoking and drinking hard liquor, it became clear to me that I must immediately stop reading. And I think when we pick up the Torah and we start reading it and we see all these rules and regulations and restrictions, a lot of people close the book. What is it that we're celebrating on this day? Well, it's a very strange thing, and don't tell my wife, but when I have a list of what I have to do when I go shopping in the Yehuda market, the Machane Yehuda market, I actually enjoy that. I have a list and I know what I have to do. And I enjoy knowing what I have to do and doing what I have to do, and I enjoy ticking it off. They even say that when you tick off a task list and you check off that I did it, it actually generates dopamine. It gives you a little what they call joy juice. And in the strangest way, we love to do what we have to do. Now, this is kind of the interesting paradox. We want to choose to do what we have to do. We don't want to do it because we have to do it. We want to do something that is so essential that it's something we have to do, but we want to freely do what we have to do. It's a very strange thing. In other words, if I was forced to do it, and I had no free will, but I'm freely choosing to say, okay, and I'll go do the shopping. There's a tremendous gift of having a list of what you have to do and having the freedom to choose to do it or not, and you can choose to do it or not. People say it's very strange. They say, well, how do I really have choice when there's consequences in the Torah that says, for instance, if I break Shabbat, there's harsh consequences? No, you don't understand. If there are no consequences, there is no choice. A choice means that if I do this, it incurs these consequences, and if I do that, it incurs those consequences. So there are consequences, and without consequences, then what I choose to do is inconsequential. But I want to be able to choose to do what I have to do. I like to know what I have to do, and I like to have the freedom to do it or not to do it. But it's something that important. A number of years ago, I met this guy who was a super wealthy, successful businessman at a very young age, and he was bragging about his free lifestyle. He doesn't have to go to work. He doesn't have to wake up at any time of the day. He is really happy he's not married because he doesn't have to answer to anybody. He's got a list of girlfriends that he could call whenever he wants. He can eat whatever he wants. He can choose whatever restaurant to have it, sent in. And he was just bragging about how free his life is and how really he lives a life where there's nothing he has to do anymore. And what was interesting about him is, as much he was bragging about how great his life was, he was incredibly depressed. And a good sign of it is he was talking to me, because generally people don't talk to rabbis if their life is going well. Why did he want to spend time with me? Why was he looking for time? Because he really was a miserable guy, because he had nothing he ever has to do. So that means that there's nothing that is really that important. Getting the Torah means this is what you have to do in order to live the best life. And of course, it's a recipe for what Jewish people have to do. There's a tremendous amount in there what all mankind has to do. But there's a tremendous gift to know what I have to do, what makes up a real life, and do that.
You're giving such a reframe, I'll call it, because it resonates. What you're saying resonates, that it's true. The meaningful parts of my life as you're sharing this are often the ones that have a tremendous amount of responsibility, like being a wife, being a mother, the kind of things I do for the community. All of the things, as I'm quickly going through my mind of what does create a meaningful life, entail a certain amount of responsibility, and not having those things, and therefore not having any of those responsibilities, I think my life would feel so much emptier. But I think the reframe that you're sharing here, it's not that I have to do these things. I get to do these things, and they give me tremendous meaning and purpose. But as you're pointing out too, even having some direction of what choices do we make that actually will make a meaningful life, having that direction is so important, so we even know what road to take.
Right, but I want to just enhance that a little bit. So this is really what I have to do. It's just I can choose to do what I have to do, or I can choose not to do what I have to do. I'm not like an animal. An animal has to do what he has to do and cannot choose it. There is no choice in the matter. An animal doesn't choose. So what an animal does is what he has to do, and he has no choice in the story. We, on the other hand, there are things that we have to do, and we can choose to do it and enjoy the reward of that, or we could choose to not do that and suffer the consequences of that. But there's something that we have to do, and we can choose to do it or not to do it. That's really the strange thing about the Torah. On one hand, the Jewish people are praised that they said Na'aseh v'nishma. They said, we will do and we will listen. In other words, they didn't even ask what's written in it. You know, generally somebody asks you, listen, I want to ask you to do something. You say, okay, let me know what it is and I'll tell you if it's okay. But here the Jewish people said, God, whatever you say, whatever you ask us to do, we're going to do it. So we are freely, completely choosing to do whatever you ask us to do. And that was considered to be something really exceptional, that the Jewish people so freely and so lovingly embrace the will of God without knowing exactly what it is. On the other hand, there's an oral tradition that says that God says, this mountain that you are under, I hold it over your heads, and if you don't accept the Torah, I'm going to drop it on you. And if you don't accept this, you will die. Now, this is completely the contradiction to two very important and very well-known traditions. Did the Jewish people freely choose the Torah, or were they coerced to accept the Torah? And I think it really lies in over here. God said, it's great that you freely chose it, but I want you to know that your life depends on this, because this is really what you have to do. And I'm happy that you know that you should freely choose to do what you have to do. And so what is so great about the Torah, what the Torah describes, at least for a Jewish person in detail, is what constitutes a real life, an essential life, a total life. And if you choose to live in alignment with that, then you get the big prize, which is a whole life, a real life. And if you choose not to, then you're really opting for non-life, which we generally call death.
What you're saying is so significant, because it is sort of a wonderful thing that God created us and didn't just put us out here with no sense of direction. How do we live a more meaningful life, or a meaningful life and purposeful life? That there are actually guidelines for how to do that. So why now? Meaning, when I say why now, that we're celebrating something that happened a long time ago, but it wasn't like God created the first man and immediately gave him this Torah with these instructions and these rules and these laws and these guidelines. It took a certain amount of time within history for the receiving of the Torah after the Jewish people left Egypt. So even as much as I recognize what you're saying, how important it is to have these rules and guidelines so we know how to live the best life we can, why was this not given originally when man was created?
Well, when man was created, he was given some guidelines, not the totality of the Torah, and he had an intuition for what's right and what's wrong. He chose wrong. The question is, why did it take so long to receive the Torah? And I think perhaps it's because until you know that you need it, then you don't know that you need it. I'll give you an example. A colleague of mine, a rabbi, was invited to speak at a college campus, and he's such a wellspring of Torah knowledge that he never asks what's the topic until he gets there, because he doesn't need to prepare. So he got there and he said, well, what's the topic? And they said, well, actually, it's a debate. And he said, a debate? A debate? What's the debate about? Well, it's a debate between you, the Orthodox rabbi, with the conservative rabbi and a Reform rabbi and a Reconstructionist rabbi, and you're going to all debate whether the Torah is from God. Now, this is totally not his style. He had no clue he was getting himself into a debate, and it's really not the topic that he would want to do to try and prove that the Torah is from God. And so they gave him the opportunity to speak first, and this is what he said. You know, before I could even address the question of whether the Torah is true and from God, I would like to first ask the question whether we think we need a Torah. Because if we don't think we need a Torah, if we don't think we need a guide from God, then it doesn't matter if it's from God, because we really don't think we need it. He continued to say that we are the only creatures in the world that don't really know what we have to do. And like bees have this exceptional structure politically in their beehives, and each one knows the queen bee, the worker bee, they know who they are, they know what they have to do, they know how to do it, and they do it. Beavers, not one beaver ever got his degree in engineering in order to build a dam, and so, we're the only animals that can be fakes, or not animals, we're the only creatures that can be confused and think we're somebody that we're not. We don't know who we are. We don't know what we need to do. We don't know how to do it. And we need instructions. And sometimes, in order to really be receptive, you need to bump into a couple of walls in your life. Now, why it took that long, I don't know. But I think before we are really ready to say, I need this, I really need rules in my life. When I was a kid, a teenager, I loved rock and roll. And one of my favorite rock bands was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And they had a song, and I don't remember the lyrics of almost any song, but this song really hit me. And the lyrics were, "You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by." And I'm a teenager, and those lyrics just hit me like, I feel I'm on a road, I feel I'm on a journey, don't have a code, I don't have an instruction, I don't have a map. And I think, sometimes people need to know, that I really must get a map. Maybe there's a map out there. Maybe there's a guidebook from, maybe there's an owner's manual. Not that we're the owner, but the owner as manual on how to operate our lives, because what is a life anyways? What constitutes a life? And that's what the Torah is saying. Living a Torah life, the values of Torah and living according to the rules of Torah is what it really means to be alive. And if you don't live it, or you compromise some of it, to that extent, you're not alive. And this is what we're getting. We're getting a Torat Chaim. We're getting a manual to life that describes what is life and how to live it.
It's pretty amazing as I'm thinking about it too, because God created us, and when you would want to understand what the Creator, what's His vision for what He has created, what's the best way to use the creation of the inventor, meaning all these questions one could have, and we're not actually sitting here in the dark about all this, because with the Torah, revelation of the Torah, it really reveals what the intention and what the purpose and the most optimal way for us, God's creations, to live our lives. As I think about that, that is pretty unbelievable. It almost is as if I'm thinking there was a certain amount of time we didn't have the level of clarity that we now have with having received the Torah. And I'm now also understanding why this is something to celebrate, because for the time before we received the Torah, we didn't have the level of understanding of what God wanted from us, how we could optimally live our lives. And now that we do have that capacity, it's like a celebration of the fact that we are given these instructions, these guidelines.
Yeah, like imagine, here's a kind of crazy metaphor. Imagine you're a fan, but you don't know you're a fan. You don't know that your job is to cool off the room. And you've got a propeller that spins, and you somehow think that you're a helicopter. And you're trying to fly, you're trying to move, and you're really frustrated because you who you think you are is not at all who you are, because you haven't met your inventor. Imagine you meet your inventor and says, you know what? Your life is about cooling off rooms. You're not meant to move around. I mean, maybe hung on a wall, you kind of go back and forth, but you're not to go into orbit. You're not there to fly, and you're not there to transport people. You're there to cool people off. What a great gift. I can't imagine a better gift than somebody helping me know, who am I? What is life about? And how do I live it? In the best way I can.
Wow, I love that example, because it really does make sense that all these pieces and parts, you might be aware of certain aspects of it, but to really, really live a more fulfilled, meaningful, purpose-driven life, it's so true that we really have to have a direction for what is our purpose. So by having these instructions, and it's almost like a gift, because otherwise there can be a tremendous amount of confusion as to why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And even when we want to live a good life, how often do we think we might be doing a right and good thing, but sometimes there's conflicts even with, is this right, or is there can be a conflicting value that comes up? How would we know what the answer is? And by being given these instructions, it really gives this roadmap and direction to how to make proper decisions in our lives as well.
Yeah, the world is taking off in such a dramatic and fast way technologically. I mean, like AI, ways, we are so advanced technologically, and yet when it comes to relationships, love, feeling happy in our lives, self-worth, we're not as progressed as the technology is. So, I think it makes sense that a person say, wait, I wonder, maybe the creator left an owner's manual somewhere. Maybe I don't have to wing it. Maybe I don't have to try and figure it out on my own. Maybe I don't have to learn from my mistakes or learn from everybody else's mistakes. Maybe there's actually a map. Maybe there isn't. I think there is. I've decided for myself there is. But at the very least, I think we all owe it to say, hey, there's some really great guidelines out there, or claims of guidelines from the divine, and let's see if let's explore it. Let's explore it, and that's what the Jewish people are celebrating on Shavuot. We are confident that that guideline from the divine has been given to us, and not just for us. We're meant to be a channel of sharing those basic values, the very specific details of the Torah, specifically designed for us, but there's much detail in there and guidelines that is relevant to all of mankind.
Wow. So when we are celebrating Shavuot and this time of year where we were the anniversary of having been given the Torah, what should the mind frame, the mind space be during this holiday? I mean, I'm already thinking based on what you're sharing is one, even just appreciating the gift of having these guidelines. I would also think examining to make sure where is my life holding up in accordance with those guidelines. Do I need to make some tweaks? I feel like it makes sense that even when we have a mission statement, from time to time we need to, it doesn't help to just have it sit in the closet. From time to time I do need to examine it and to make sure where is my life in alignment with my mission statement and where is it off and I need to make some changes. So that I can definitely see as important. But any other thoughts we should be having on this holiday as it approaches?
Yeah, I think we should receive the Torah on behalf of all of mankind. On Shavuot, we celebrate the story of Ruth, and from Ruth came King David, and from King David will come the Messiah, and the Messiah isn't coming just for the Jewish people. The Messiah is coming to bring world peace. And why are we celebrating that story of Ruth? Okay, she's a convert. She embraced Judaism, but I think there's something very universal about this day that we receive the Torah not just for us, not so we can have a good life, but that we could be a role model for others to have a good life. And that's why every morning when we say Birkat Torah, the blessings of the Torah, we remind ourselves that we are being chosen by God. And what does that got to do with the Torah learning that I do today? Because I have to learn Torah with an attitude that it's not just for me, it's not just for us, it's not just for the Jewish people, but we're meant to be a channel of blessing to all of mankind. And we say, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. From Zion will go out Torah. Where is it going if we're supposed to be here, or when we finally get here, where is it going? It's going to the world. The basic values and the vision of the Torah is to be meant to be shared for all of mankind. And from here will be the great broadcast, or in this case, it'll be the great Godcast.
Well, that really is a sense of mission, and it makes sense with such a mission that we should also be celebrating that mission, examining it, and celebrating the fact, whatever aspects of that mission we are presently living, and embracing the idea of that this mission is the significance of it, that it's been given to us by God, and celebrating this mission. And so I hope with that, I know for myself, this will definitely enhance my celebration and my understanding of what it is that I'm celebrating on the holiday of Shavuot. I want to wish you all a meaningful, enlightening, uplifting, and celebratory Shavuot. Thank you for joining us, Soul Talk, Rabbi David Aaron and Leora Mandel.